We'll go ahead and get started with some calls. Bobby in Los Angeles, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you, Matt?
Pretty good.
Yeah, I spoke with you maybe over a year ago. A lot has happened to me since then. I lost a family member.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult for me to even give you a call today, to gain the confidence, because we didn't quite get to talk about. Well, my problem is a lot of times when you ask me a question, I can't give you the good answer right away. I think of the answer like after the show, because I'm not experienced with this. It's not something I do every Sunday, It's just when I stop and think about life, then that's when I start to ask these questions. And
so it seems that probably one of the best things to do is, if you can't come up with a response, just say, let me think about that and get back to you. And go off and think about it and take notes and call back when you have an answer.
Right.
So what did you have?
Because I'm not very trained. I mean, since I spoke to you before, and I'm not Jonathan. Just a shout out to Russell. I'm Bobby from Los Angeles.
Okay.
And the guy from the chat room, Boy Cake. Hi, Boy Cake. I'm Rio. Yes, I spoke to you. So the reason why I'm calling is because we live in a country that is amazing. I think people have freedom of religion and freedom not to practice a religion, but it's not so simple.
It's not.
It comes down to this clash. And it becomes this frontier, I think this war almost sometimes, when we bounce these ideas. And it's coming down to, is there a God or is there no God? So every time when I say I'm going to call about God, it always comes down to the same thing. Is there a God or is there no God? Now,
yeah, go ahead. Tracie wants to ask you something.
Yeah, Bobby, I just want to ask you something.
Yes.
Are you aware that you can have your personal, private religious beliefs and just not engage with people if you don't want to?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what do you mean when you say that you think there's this war going on? I mean, don't you think that the people that are engaging in the debate are voluntarily engaging in that debate? Nobody's forced to.
I'm voluntarily engaging today.
Right,
I'm going out of my way to give you a call.
Okay, and I guess I appreciate it, but I guess what I'm confused about is that you're almost describing it like it's an uncomfortable thing that you don't like to do, and I guess my response is then you don't have to do it.
And there was one more thing where you said it comes down to whether a God exists or no God exists, and I think that's wrong. I think it comes down to whether or not the various claims about God are rationally justified or not. I mean, I fully acknowledge that depending on what your definition is and everything else, I can't demonstrate that there is no God. But that doesn't matter because the burden of proof is on those who assert that there is a God. So the question isn't, is there a God or isn't there a God? It's, is the God claim believable or not?
Okay, that's a very good question. And if I may respond to that, what type of God claim would you think it's reasonable?
I don't know. You'd have to present me with one. I haven't found any of the God claims to be reasonably justified by evidence. I haven't found any of them convincing enough to believe, so you'd have to come up with one.
Okay. I personally think that any claim about God is a view of the character of God. I think of it as God is on the top of a mountain. Whatever comes down, a rock or whatever, people are taking that and interpreting it, oh, God is mad or God is evil or whatever, where that might not be the case. You see, I'm just using a metaphor actually to say what I think about different religions.
Okay, and my point is, what reason do you have to believe that your view is correct?
My reason to believe is again personal, but it for me it seems like most plausible, most explaining of existence.
Okay. You say your reason is personal and that you're convinced it's most plausible. That just tells me that you believe. That doesn't tell me. That doesn't tell me why you believe. It doesn't tell me whether you think it's reasonable to believe. It doesn't tell me whether you think it's reasonable for somebody else to believe.
Okay.
What would it take to change? What would it take?
each one.
What would it take to convince you that you're not correct?
Well, I want to first address why do I think my belief is reasonable, and why do I think that everything I said is true.
Well, you haven't said anything yet.
I don't know if it's... Okay,
you haven't said anything yet. So for all I know, you believe that the tree in your backyard is God, and now you're going to tell me why it's reasonable. I mean, we haven't even gotten to the point of...
No, I'm a
saying...
panentheist. I'm a panentheist. Panentheism means everything is in God, or God is in everything. It's vice versa. It works for both ways.
Sure.
It's a view. It's a view I have on life, and it's most reasonable to me because it explains existence to me. It explains
how.
Well, let's just. For me, it's a mind-independent concept. I think of it as the most probable thing that it will happen, even if.
How did you determine that? I mean, you just keep saying things, Bobby. You keep saying, I'm a pantheist, and I believe that God is in everything, and that just makes the most sense to me. But that doesn't tell me anything at all about why you believe it or why you think it's reasonable, or what difference it makes.
Okay, I believe it because I think it's mind-independent. I believe it because I think that if humanity was to cease to exist and a different intelligent species was to evolve, they will come up with a concept of God.
Why?
Why do you think that?
Why
because I think it is mind-independent.
I know you think it's. Why do you think it's mind-independent?
Because it comes up in different cultures independently already on Earth. It has come up in thousands of years of populations.
That's not mind-independent. That is directly contingent upon minds. The fact that different minds have come up with similar concepts does not mean that there is something true that they have discovered.
So my question is then, do you believe there will be could be an alien race in the universe that believes there is a reason for existence, an animating force behind existence?
Could there be an alien race that might agree with you? I guess. I don't know.
So
how would we find that out?
Would that make the concept of God a mind-independent concept, despite the characteristics of it? Like
no. No. What would make the
why wouldn't it be a mind-independent concept?
Because the fact that me and someone in a foreign country both came to similar ideas doesn't change when you say instead of a foreign country, you say some other planet. That doesn't change the situation. That's just a matter of geography.
Right. It is a matter of geography, but...
Correct. And so...
if people are not connected to each other and they come up with the same idea, that idea, like gravity, should be something that exists and it's mind-independent.
Well, no, there are things in people's brains. I mean, we all have human brains. It shouldn't surprise you when two human brains come up with similar concepts, no matter where they are. I mean, we have similar brains that function in similar ways, that recognize similar patterns, and we also.
But that doesn't explain why these concepts arise. Why is there an existence of a concept like gravity, or why is there?
Gravity isn't a concept. Gravity is a recognition of a physical event in the universe.
Okay, well...
That's what he's saying God is.
Okay, demonstrate it. You do realize that, there's actual science for gravity. Do you have science for your God concept?
I don't think there could be a science for God concept because...
Then why would you ever believe it? Why would you believe it, and how could you...
Look,
Bobby, hang on. If you have said that you find this probable... That's an assertion that you've been able to calculate how likely an answer is and determine that this is the best explanation. This is the probable explanation. And if you don't think there can be anything like a scientific demonstration of this concept, then how did you determine how probable it was?
I didn't say I don't think there can be a scientific explanation. I think that we probably haven't arrived at that explanation yet.
Okay, then why would you believe it? Why would you believe it before we've arrived at the point at which it could be demonstrated?
So why would people believe in the Higgs boson and look for it with the Hadron Collider in Europe if they didn't think it was there?
Oh, now wait a minute. There's a difference between. First of all, I'm not going to get into like the physics of it because I can't. But there's a difference between a hypothesis and a conclusion. All right, now if you say, I have this idea that there might be this God, that's one thing. But if you're saying you believe it's true, that requires a demonstration. You don't accept it as true until it's demonstrated. The evidence that supports your hypothesis is not the evidence that demonstrates it's true.
Okay, so
somebody, hang on, Bobby, hang on. For clarity, just to address your Higgs boson thing, anybody who actually believed in the existence of the Higgs boson before it was demonstrated did not believe so for rational reasons. It doesn't matter that ultimately they were proved to be true any more than if you believe the butler did it. You do not have a rational justification for that belief until there's an actual demonstration, and then you're justified. Because up until that point, you could be wrong and you haven't demonstrated why your answer is likely to be correct. But when you start going down this idea of, well, people believed that what they believed in was the possibility of the Higgs boson. This was the direction that the physics seemed to be pointing. Not everybody accepted it, and it took a demonstration before it was reasonable to believe it. And instead, you want to claim that you're just convinced this is reasonable, and that someday we might, I didn't put words in your mouth.
No, look, I can agree with you to disagree that I'm not certain, okay? I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
It's not about certainty.
You said this was the most probable explanation, and you believe that it's actually true. And when we asked why, you have given us nothing.
Yeah, how have you compared this to reality? Because that's what true means, right? If I say that it's true that I'm holding glass, I don't know if you can see the screen, but I have nothing in my hands. If I said that it's true that I'm holding sunglasses in my hands, that would not be true because it doesn't correspond to reality, right? You can compare the reality to my claim and see that I'm telling a falsehood. Now, if
I'm not even looking at you, so I have to take your statement
right, and I understand that, but I just wanted you to know what the audience was going to be seeing. So. Okay. What my point, though, would be if you can't compare the claim to reality, you can't assess it for truth value. Like, how would you do that?
And moreover, you don't have. Moreover, Bobby, you don't have to take. You don't have to take her claim on faith. You can reserve judgment until you can actually investigate it, which means you can log onto the internet and watch this episode after it's posted and see whether or not she had sunglasses in her hand. And if you can't do that, then you may not have a good reason to believe her.
Right. I could be lying to you. So it's like,
go ahead. Let me just address this issue with the glass in the hand and faith. I think that faith it could be the best, most prized commodity that we have. It would certainly save a lot of time, and it would speak more about the person who is making the claim. If they're failing or violating the faith that we have, then that's on them. It's not on me to be taking their claim on face value. If she says I'm holding a glass in my hand and she's not, and I take her word for it, it speaks about her as not being honest. Or
no, it doesn't. It doesn't do that on its own.
Not to examine her claim.
Yes, it does. It demonstrates that you are willing to accept things without sufficient evidence. If you believe something and you are later demonstrated to be wrong, then by definition, you were not rationally justified in believing it. If you believe something, and you later turn out to be correct, you may or may not have been rationally justified.
Okay, let me then bring in something else. If we just throw away the concept of God, okay, because we haven't proven it to be correct, right? We have a hypothesis that God is behind existence. And we throw away the hypothesis, then later on we come up many years later, or maybe never come up with the science or the science that incorporates objectivity with subjectivity.
You're not.
And we actually can prove that God exists.
Why would you throw out the hypothesis?
Right, that's
if
what
we
I'm
throw
wondering.
that hypothesis,
why would you throw it out?
Why wouldn't you
never come
test
up
it?
with the science because
Bobby,
it didn't give us
it's a question. Why would you ever throw out the hypothesis?
I don't want to throw it away. You guys are making it seem like I should throw it away.
No. But recognize it's just a hypothesis. I mean, the point to forming a hypothesis is then to say, now how do I compare this to reality to see if it's true or not? And that's when you believe it after you compare it to reality and saw that it's true.
Isn't that what we're working on? Isn't that what we're working on? Trying to bring in the subjectivity with objectivity in science to be able to prove that to you guys once and for all? Isn't
Yeah,
that
I don't
what-
know if
I
you're
don't
working on
know.
it or not. But I mean, if somebody is, that's fine with me. I
And
think that if you have a concept about how you think the universe works or the world works or something in life works, and you can't compare it to reality, the question is then, how do you think of a way to compare it to reality so that you then can know that it's true? When you can know that it's true, then you believe it.
Yeah, if you're working
I
on
think
if
a
you're
lot of people have already-
Bobby, if you're working on a way to demonstrate your hypothesis, great. Once you're actually able to do it, that is the point at which it is reasonable to accept that the hypothesis is true or likely true. Until you can actually,
that point, I
Bobby.
don't think it's reasonable for people to say that it's ridiculous what people believe.
If you accept it as true before it's demonstrated as true, and you understand that you
ridiculous.
haven't tested it, you haven't confirmed it corresponds to reality, but you're saying that it does, that is not reasonable.
As I said about 10 minutes ago, I can't demonstrate that there is no God, and my position is not that the possibility of a God is necessarily ridiculous. That's all contingent upon which God we're talking about. But what is ridiculous is to accept the claim before you have evidence to support it.
Okay, so in a sense, you do believe that there might possibly be a God.
I don't know. You haven't defined a God other than to say God is in everything. I don't even know what that means or why that would be useful or why it deserves to be called a God, because the God label has some baggage that comes with it that implies generally some kind of intelligent agent, and pantheism doesn't necessarily require that. So to me, pantheism and panentheism are useless propositions that are basically relabeling mysteries and things we don't understand with the God label and offering absolutely no justification for why we should use that label.
It's just deductive reasoning.
No, it's not deductive reasoning. Bobby, do you even know what deductive reasoning is? What were your premises that you used to deduce that there is a God and this God is in everything?
Cosmological argument.
The cosmological argument was your premise to deduce that there is a God and it's in everything.
There's three premises. The first.
No, I asked what your premise was, and you replied with the cosmological argument.
Yeah, because we're talking too fast, and I just give you the shortcut answer. The first premise of the cosmological argument is...
I'm aware of the
everything
cosmological argument, and actually...
Okay, so there's three premises that lead deductively to conclude that there is a being responsible for existence.
No, they don't.
Time, space.
No, they don't. No, they don't. No, they don't. No, they fucking don't. The cosmological argument tells you nothing about a being. Even if the cosmological argument were valid and sound, it does not lead to a being. It does not lead to a thinking agent. All it leads to, if it were valid and sound, is that there must be some external cause to the universe. That's it. Doesn't tell you anything about what that cause is.
Well, okay, that was...
And it certainly
the
doesn't
first one.
doesn't lead to the idea that God is in everything, which is what you believe. So let's assume for a second that the cosmological argument is both valid and sound and has led us to the conclusion that there must have been some cause for the universe. What is your deductive argument to get from that to I believe God is in everything? Because it doesn't exist.
It's just looking at all of the arguments.
That's not a deductive process. You're looking around and picking what you feel seems most reasonable. You've got no demonstration of anything.
Okay, is that it?
Yep. Thanks.
I feel better. But I don't like people ridiculing theists just because they have a hypothesis. And just because they're not there...
Don't call a hypothesis a conclusion, and we might be more sympathetic.
We're not ridiculing people for having hypotheses, Bobby. We're ridiculing people for claiming that their hypothesis is a conclusion and it's reasonable, and especially if they say that it's that it is reached by deductive reasoning when they don't have the first clue what that means. Anyway,